Hello, Kevin.
Hello, Matt.
What you doing?
Moving some mics.
Do you hear me in your left ear?
Talk again?
Do you hear me in your right ear?
I think the right ear.
That's good.
This is our cold open for the next one, right?
Is it?
Yeah. All right. Hello, and welcome to the Rite of String podcast. I'm Kevin Sluter.
And I'm Matt Moreno.
And we are bringing you a show about orchestra teachers,
For orchestra teachers.
and those aspiring to be orchestra teachers. Based on the Giving Bach model created by Richard Meyer, Downing Gives Bach is a full inclusion curriculum developed for both general education students and those enrolled in special education classes at Downing Middle School in Flower Mound, Texas. The orchestra director Bethany Hardwick and special education department head Jennifer Rodgers sit down with us to describe their journey in teaming up and creating a classroom environment where all students can learn to enjoy, appreciate, and perform music.
I grew up in San Antonio, and in San Antonio on Sundays, the San Antonio Symphony for Music did this family concert series, which was really, really cool. And on my, I think, 9th birthday, there was a family concert, and my dad entered me into this raffle. And they had a raffle that if you win, you got to go sit on stage with the symphony, which is really, really cool. So they called my name, and I got to sit next to Julie, the piccolo player, which was super fun. And so she was showing me all of the instruments around her, but I couldn't stop watching the violin. It just was really, really pretty to me. So I decided to pick up the violin in 5th grade strings in San Antonio, and then I was in it in middle school, and in high school I was with Elaine Heinze and Jason Thibodeau there, and they were both fantastic. And then I went to UNT and studied with Phil Lewis there, and was involved with a lot of things. I played with the mariachi there, with the jazz strings. I played in a couple country bands while I was there, which was fun. And then I started private teaching in the district that I'm in now, which was really nice because then when I was student teaching, it was with people that I knew. And then my first year at Downing, I already had colleagues and friends that I could go to. So I never really felt, alone when I started at Downing, which was really nice. So, and then I've been at Downing for 9 years now.
Nice.
And Matt and I were first year teachers together.
We were.
Oh, fun.
There was a pack of us that came into Louisville together.
And then Kevin and I played an orchestra together at UNT.
We did.
And so how about you, Jen?
All right, so I am much older than Bethany, but I grew up in Grenada, Mississippi, and since I was 8 years old, I wanted to be a special education teacher, and so I went to school, majored in special ed, and just have fought probably since I was 8 years old. I had a cousin that was cognitively disabled, and we fought for every opportunity that she could have to be like her cousins and her peers. So I think that worked out really well, transitioning into how the program kind of got started, that even kids with special needs deserve every opportunity that a gen ed kid does.
Sure.
So
what do you teach entirely at Downing?
Okay, I've been at Downing for 15 years, and so I've done a little bit of everything. Right now I'm the academic life skills teacher, so my students are pretty severely cognitively delayed. Some of them have Down syndrome, autism, some that are just cognitively, intellectually disabled. So all of their academic classes are taught by me through alternative skills versus TEKS-based. So we just work on what life skills are they going to need when they go out into the real world.
I see. And did you have any background of music growing up?
I did. I played piano when I was younger in elementary school, and I was actually a vocalist.
Okay.
And it doesn't sound like it now from years and years. The phrase if you don't use it, you lose it goes for every instrument, including your voice. But I instilled in my own children fine arts, so both of them are very much into fine arts. One is going to be a theater major at OU next year. The other is a vocalist in her own right. So
great.
Yeah.
And just for the listeners, Bethany, what all are you teaching right now?
I am the orchestra director at Downing, and I have 3 different orchestras, beginner and non-varsity and varsity, and that's my main role.
Yeah, and then you also have extras like your rockestra.
Oh yes, we do, absolutely. We do a rockestra. We actually started a community orchestra this year. We're calling it the Downing Gives Bach Orchestra, And it's a group of 7th and 8th graders. I gave them some just kind of grade 1 lower music, and then we go play at nursing homes and things like that. So I picked easier music so that we can sight read it really quick before we go. But like over Valentine's Day time period, we went to 3 nursing homes, and the CCA to go perform for people. So that was really cool.
So a full schedule's enough already for the two of you.
Yes, absolutely.
And then going into our topic for today, let's just kind of start. Do you want to start with talking about the Giving Bach organization, how you came across that?
So Giving Bach was started by Richard Meyer in 2009 at his schools in California. They paired up with a special needs school that was really close to them and created this interactive concert series where they would go and perform for the kids, but they also created a way for them to play on the instruments. The goal of Giving Bach was for everyone to be able to play an instrument. So Richard Meyer wrote this super cute piece called the D-String Blues, and you can actually find it on givingbach.org on his website. There's a whole list of resources, but the D-String Blues is basically the orchestra plays a measure, and then your special guests get to play a measure of just open D, and it's guided. You help them hold the instrument up, you help them guide the bow, so they're 100% successful. But that was his way of getting instruments into the hands of everybody. So I heard about it probably 4 years ago at a TOTA convention. He was there speaking, and it was one of those things that you watch and it's so beautiful and it's so wonderful, but at conferences you're so overwhelmed, so it kind of just got stored for a little while, but then we got a really good opportunity to pull it out again, so we did.
So how did you first get this brought over to Downing?
I was finishing my master's at Boston University, and I was taking a social justice and music education class. And the first day, I found out that I was going to have a project where I had to reach out to a marginalized population in my community and bring them music. Now, this was supposed to be a theoretical thing. I didn't have to do it, but I went to Jen, and I don't think she even let me finish the sentence. She was like, yes, let's do it. And then I had like a month to try to figure out what I wanted to do. So I wasn't sure yet, but every time I saw Jennifer, she's like, when are we getting together? What are we doing? When is this starting? So I thought back to that TOTA clinic that Richard Meyer did, and I hopped on the website and I showed it to her, and we started talking, and we decided that we were going to do exactly that. So that's how we started.
Okay.
Was starting a chapter of Giving Bach. We decided to make t-shirts because, middle schoolers love t-shirts for everything. So there's an email on the Giving Bach site. So I just emailed it to ask if we could use the logo. And then within an hour, Richard had emailed us back. Wow. And was so polite. And, do you have any other questions? So the two of us had started to come up with how do we do these things. So we, had a back and forth with him for a little while. We've actually kind of kept in touch with him a little bit. We'll send him updates on occasion with what we're doing.
Great. Yeah. He's such a nice guy.
He is so nice.
I met him last year at an all-region I was doing, and I was He
is just the nicest. Yeah.
It was amazing.
Wonderful. We actually sent him a shirt. He asked if he could have one of our shirts, and he sent us a selfie of him wearing it with a thumbs up. And all of my kids were just so excited because they forget that those composers are real people because they don't, interact with them like we do. So it's so exciting for them because they love playing like The Curse of the Rosin-Eating Zombies and all of that stuff. That's their favorite things to play. So they were pumped that he had our shirt.
Yeah. So it got started that way, and then what did you do in terms of moving forward with the administration and communicating with the students and the parents?
We set up kind of a concert series, I guess. So we based our first kind of step around all of my concerts, fall, winter, UIL, and spring. We brought Jennifer's kids in during their class time. So there was no after school, there wasn't anything. I told the parents we were doing this and they were excited, but we just wanted this to be kind of an organic during the school day thing. And so we brought her kids in, we got a performance opportunity, and we played our concert music. We did D-String Blues so that they could play. And then while we were playing, Jennifer also had her kids walking around and touching the instruments because they had just talked about sound waves. And so this was a cool way for them to get a really good physical understanding of what that meant. And then we wanted to kind of make it mutually empowering. We didn't want it to be just one-sided and, the orchestra kids teaching everything. So I gave her a list of topics of like what our music was about. So one of my groups was doing Sahara Crossing, Sunhi Newbold. They were doing a few things. And so her kids came in with facts about Egypt when we did Sahara Crossing. And then when we did Frozen, they had facts about fairy tales. So just ways to kind of empower both sides. So that's how we started. Our principal was on board right away. the very first performance that we ever did, it was kind of overwhelming because I was collecting research for my project. So Allison Washler, our high school director, was in there filming for me because I needed that research. Our principal was in there filming. She was just really excited. The Louisville ISD PR kind of person was in there because they were going to do a story on it. A couple teachers were in there. So there's 6 or 7 adults in there for the very first time that we've done this. So I was a little bit like, oh my gosh, I hope I don't mess up. But it ended up being really, really, really cool. And the kids just loved it. And since I was collecting research, I interviewed all the kids afterwards, my kids and Jen's kids, and they couldn't stop smiling. They were just so excited. And we got some cute things.
Our principal, our admin, is really supportive of both the fine arts and also the empowering of special needs. So to kind of prep for all of that, I talked to my kids about what to expect because those kids need to be prepped. And also, I just went to talk to Bethany's kids a little bit about what to expect. If there's a certain behavior, what do you do if somebody gets a little nervous or whatever. And I think that prepared them well. The touching of the instruments kind of happened before we even knew what happened. Like when you take kids into a situation like that, wheels start spinning. So then they start asking questions. So by the end of that, they were not only touching the instruments and feeling the vibrations, but they were talking about high and low sounds and the sizes of the instrument and doing some problem solving things that we never anticipated would happen. So after that first event, we're like, well, maybe we could do a little bit more.
How long was that first event?
The concert itself was probably 25 minutes.
Yeah. And it was also hands-on.
Very hands-on. They walked around. We have these cute videos of Jennifer just walking around and all of her kids following her and just stopping and touching instruments. And I think at first we were all just trying to figure each other out. And there was just this kind of level of uncertainty. For me, for my kids, for Jennifer, and for her kids, we weren't really sure. Now when they come in, it's like everybody knows what to do and they just immediately start touching and talking, and it's really cool.
So then after that first performance, how did you start planning ahead and learning how to utilize each other?
It kind of took a life of its own.
It really did.
I mean, we see it, and we see it happening, and of course, Bethany and I are fighting back tears. And then we're like, okay, they wanted more.
They really
It
did.
wasn't just about the kids holding the instruments, but even the gen ed kids are...
They
can do more. Why can't they play the instrument? So then we changed it to what if at the end of the year my kids could actually play unassisted
independently D-string blues.
D-string blues.
So we did the fall thing, and it was so much, and we loved it. So when we did it again in the winter, I remember watching your kids immediately grabbed the instruments and knew where to put them. They had only played them one time, but they immediately assumed that position. And so we were both just like, I think we can do more with this. So I called Jamie and Ron at Dallas Strings, and I was like, look, do you have beater instruments that you can't rent, that you need to get rid of? Can you sell them for cheap? And within a week, they had donated 4 instruments. And word got out to some of my high schoolers who had rented to own the instruments and then purchased a separate one, so they just had spare instruments. So I think now we have 7 or 8 through different people have brought us. One mom found one at a thrift shop, and it didn't take much to fix it up, so we got that. So we started bringing the kids in during advisory to kind of learn how to be independent. And the first day we did it was just letting them experiment. So they just got to go wherever and make
It was awful.
all kinds of noises. It was rough. And then we let them do that the first time. And then the second time they came in, we tried to do the actual process where they stay on the D string. So we called it their magic string, and they had to find their magic string, play it 4 times, and then stop. The first few times we did it, it didn't work
You have to remember, these kids, they struggle with following directions, with being able to start and stop, So there was this sense of pride that they could do it. Watch Miss Hardwick or Hardy Party, that they call her, and Hardy Party, and to be able to start and stop like that. So that was...
It took us a few tries to do it, and once we did it, it was awesome. But it was like both of us counting and then putting our hands up like, please stop. So we got it to work, and then by the spring concert, we had them all in a row in front of my varsity orchestra, and then I had a couple of my kiddos standing behind them just in case they needed something, but they didn't. They were totally fine. They played the D-string blues completely independently. They got a standing ovation from the whole audience, I mean, it was the highlight of the concert. It really, really was. So since Downing Gives Bach had become such a thing for us at that point, we gave them each little trophies at the spring concert that said Downing Gives Bach founding member, which we all were really excited about. So it was a fun concert.
One of the students that we have, the older brother played bass in high school. And so for her to sit there with her special needs child, she's like, I get to be a normal parent like everybody else who gets to enjoy my child doing something, that is unheard of for a child, with those kind of struggles.
That's really great.
It was neat.
Really fun. The whole year I feel like we cried
so
many times.
Still do.
Yeah.
Still do.
Most days.
So we had decided to try this independence thing in December, but then in January, I think it was your idea to start talking about creating an inclusion class so they could be in orchestra.
I think you did. I give you the credit for that.
We both do. We've known each other since my first day at Downing, so I mean we've worked together for a while, but we started tossing around the idea of inclusion and actually creating an inclusion class, and we weren't sure what that was going to look like or anything, but we wanted to try it. We went to our principal, and it was we didn't even get to finish her sentence. She just said yes. Like, she was so supportive right away.
We debated on kind of what that would look like for inclusion, but the big thing for me is I love the inclusive piece of it, but for me, I was very firm with her program has to maintain its integrity. So we had to find a fine balance that her job is to allow everyone the skills they need to play in an orchestra, and as great as the inclusive piece is, we had to maintain the integrity of her program moving forward. I didn't want it to be this token thing that these kids are in here, but then her program would suffer. So we've adjusted.
Or a token thing, like they're in here, but they're not actually participating. Right. We're just, letting them be in here.
Right.
And so what class did they line up with?
We we have two beginner violin classes. So we made one where most of the kids went in, and then we have 6 kids in our second one. So it's 6 gen ed kids plus Jennifer's 12. Is that how many? 12 kids?
Yes.
12 kids. So at first we were going to try to do a 1-to-1, but that would have been a really big class. So we decided to keep the 6. So Jen's kids come in. We've split the class into 2 teams because a couple of Jen's kids can handle the stuff that we're doing in Gen Ed, which is really cool. So we didn't want it to feel like Miss Rodgers students or Hardy Party students, because at that time they're all my kids. And we didn't want it to be like Team 1 and Team 2. So we are Team Hamburger and Team Taco. And the tacos are full-time, and the hamburgers are Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then we ended up adding Team Hot Dog because this group lines up with lunch, and so we have 6 kids that come in every single day, and instead of eating lunch in the cafeteria with their peers, they eat lunch in our room, and they help out. So it's super cute. They'll have like a sandwich in one hand and like be guiding a bow with another. So because we're adamant, they have to eat, they need to take care of what they need to take care of. But they want to be in there and they want to help. So we have a lot of food related things in that class, but it works. So
Bethany was actually brilliant because we looked at what instrument would fit best. And so, she thought violin, but we have some that have some major sensory issues, and it was very obvious when we
on the neck.
When we first put the instrument on a couple of our autistic kids, they didn't like the way that felt uncomfortable. So Bethany figured out that if we did a cello, it was easier for them to sit. It could lean back. One of the kids in particular holds his bow.
He doesn't like to hold his bow, but when he gets nervous, he holds his hands like what looks like a German bow hold. So he was trying to hold a French bow, German style. So one of my kids just grabbed like one of our smaller bass bows, and he started using it, and he felt really comfortable. So he bows German on a cello.
We have one student that's in a wheelchair, so she plays her violin
in her lap. She has, it's hard for her to hold it up, so she has a smaller violin that she holds in her lap, and then we gave her a much smaller bow. We tried to give her the full-length bow, but it was hitting the sides of her chair, so she has like a, I think that's quarter-size bow, so she holds it in her lap, and then she plays the quarter-size bow, so she's kind of playing cello style, but in a way that fits what she needs, which is really cool.
So what type of preparation are y'all having to do beforehand on this? I mean, I assume y'all meet up quite often to plan and
we
go
did
through
it
that.
first.
We did.
When we started just kind of the concert series last year, there wasn't too much prep. Like, we got together a little bit just to talk about what we wanted it to look like. But then obviously with inclusion, there became a lot more. I spent the summer planning, doing research. At TOTA, I found a couple books on teaching music to students with special needs. And so I was just getting my hands on everything that I could. I had this great plan for how things were going to start, and I threw most of it out just because I didn't know what to expect. And so the first 9 weeks were lots of me like on the spot, completely not knowing what to do and just trying to figure it out. And now we're both able to kind of think on our feet and figure out what to do. But we also had to get really comfortable with interrupting each other in class, because sometimes I'll say something that would work for some kids but not for all of her kids, so then she has to take over. And so we've kind of learned how to just interact well and find that balance between us.
Bethany does a really good job. I think she felt uncomfortable with it at first, but she's always been very natural with modifying it right on the spot and seeing and adjusting.
And it's been something that like I think this thing will work, but then it's clearly not, so I have to really quick find like a backup plan and what can we do instead. So we're staying on open strings with Jennifer's kids, but for a while I was trying really hard to get some fingers down. Yeah. And with some kids it worked on a Monday, but then it wouldn't work on a Wednesday. So it just kind of was depending. So I had to figure out where our limits were too, because both of us did, because this was really new.
And limits are okay. I mean, absolutely. Those limits are okay.
Absolutely.
And so do the kids do the Gen Ed kids have responsibilities also for helping out?
They do. We weren't going to give them any responsibility, but they took it on.
Yeah, they kind of kicked us out of the way, which is a beautiful thing as well. We have one particular girl that comes in and she makes sure they're all set up. And it gets to a point too where I kind of had to have a conversation with her, which is helpful for all of us. I want them to learn to do that. Like when the Gen Ed students would come up and try to turn their music, I would just say, I want them to try to turn their music. And now they go, they have to be attentive, they have to pay attention. So think from the special ed point of view, all the life skills and social skills they're having to learn. They're having to learn when to talk when it's appropriate, how to follow directions, to be self-sufficient. If you enjoy being here, you've got to put in the work also. So it's neat. Yesterday, one of the students who is kind of off in her own place, we said, all right, everybody turn to your music. She popped right up, turned her music, and we made the biggest deal. So they want to kind of mother, which is a great thing, but then we also have to tell them we need, those boundaries too. But if they notice a student having trouble, they'll come over immediately, help them try to find the note. Oh, you need more rosin. Oh, you need to tighten your bow. You're out of tune. So it's really helpful.
And that's every kid in that class.
And this is your beginner class?
This is the beginner class, yes.
Okay, so I guess that's the part I'm still uncertain about. Okay. Do all of your kids participate in some way, like
they
your
do, absolutely.
Advanced orchestras as well?
We still do the Giving Bach concert sessions just because we like it. So they don't have to come in and just play D-string blues anymore. But what we do instead is the last time they came in, they all brought their instruments and they showed us what they were playing in class. So it was kind of a cool both sides thing. So we're still doing that with our upper groups. And then our beginners, I had to promise them that once a month we would not have orchestra class. Once a month we get to hang out with our circle of friends buddies. Like I had to make that promise because they would get mad when some classes got to do it and others didn't. So when we first started, there was this level of uncertainty with the kids and frankly with myself too. I didn't know all of Jen's kids yet. No one is really afraid necessarily. We're just not sure how to interact. Should we be mothering? Should we baby them? Should we, how should we talk to them? And I saw that with my kids as well. And this crop of sixth graders, I kind of like threw them in. I was like, hey, we're doing this inclusion thing, have fun. And so they kind of, the first time we went in, they were a little timid. But now we were in there last week doing some stuff. And my violin class, for my last period violin class, which is where most of the Gen Ed kids are, we went at the end of the day to Jen's sensory lab, which she can tell you about. It's really cool. And I'm watching the kids, and this Gen Ed boy knows that Jennifer's student's favorite animal or stuffed animal is like a skunk or something. And so they were like messing. He just picked up another one. This kid knows that this kid loves playing with the ball. And so they know every kid by name. Pretty much all of my beginners know all of her students, and they all get to interact together all the time, which is awesome.
So what started off as a program with us just going into the higher orchestras evolved into a beginner class. And so we kind of have a double thing going on, right? With Downing Gives Bach, we've got the inclusion piece, then we have the upper level, and whenever we spend too much time, whenever we spend too much time with one group, the other group gets really mad, and so we have to adjust and do that.
They really do get upset with me.
We had an opportunity in November to play at a special luncheon for the Music Therapists Association.
American Music Therapy Association. They had it was a VIP luncheon.
It was
so
VIP.
fancy. So my varsity kids came with Jen's kids, and we showed them what we do. We did Downing Gives Bach, and then I kind of wrote out a quick little version of Twinkle. But it had the, solfege that Jen's kids play. It had the basic beginner line that the beginners would play, and then there was a more advanced line. So we were able to show that you could have, 3 different levels performing this piece together.
So my kids are really spoiled. They get to play with the varsity and with the beginners.
They get to play with everybody.
They get to play all the time.
Mm-hmm. They really do.
They do.
That's so great.
Yeah.
It is. It's fun.
really cool.
Has there been any situations where band and choir has participated in any way and that kind of thing, or has this stayed mostly within your department for right now?
This kind of level of it has stayed within orchestra. There have been ALS students in all of the disciplines. I think there's a couple in choir pretty much every year. But it has kind of, this level of it has definitely stayed in orchestra. But, we can always expand.
We would love to see it expanded. I will say this, that the way something like this expanded is really the personality of the director and the personality probably of the SPED person also. That it's extra assignments.
It
right?
is. It's
that
a
you
lot
have
of
to be
extra
willing
work.
to do that and love it and love the person that you work with and be able to work well with that. I think that makes a big difference too. It takes, just like in a co-teaching situation in a class for subjects, the chemistry I think with the adults is really important, because that's going to trickle down to the kids as well. We're just lucky that Bethany's always had special needs kids in her orchestras, and so this wasn't that far out of the realm, just a little different, where she just had to learn to modify a little bit differently for these kids. But she's always been willing to do that work, and that's why I made it so easy to work out for us.
We've had a relationship, because we've known each other for so long. I knew her kids when they were at Downing. We were in a Game of Thrones group chat together for quite a while before we started. We're stressed about Sunday.
Yeah.
It's coming up. So obviously this is very, very much about the kids involved in the program, but I can imagine that this is pretty rewarding extra work for y'all to do.
Absolutely.
What are some things that you've maybe learned from this experience? Some of the unexpected, some happy surprises, memorable moments, like what motivates you to continue doing it and that kind of stuff?
My biggest takeaway from last year was that I came into this thinking we were doing this for Jen's kids, but it ended up being we were doing it for mine more than anything else. Like, I didn't know that my side of things was going to have the reaction that it did. My kids tear up just as much as we do.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I look at my 8th grade girls are tearing up while we're doing stuff. They understand the impact. We get so many parent emails from both of our parents. They're just so happy with what we're doing. We make the parents cry all the time.
We're
all good, happy tears.
It
But
is.
yeah.
There have been several situations. There's one beginner student this year that male student, only child, didn't really know what to think that first day in class with my students. And his mom said, he's never really been around special needs students. And she said that he still wants to be a gamer and
a video game designer when he grows up.
And so
this is one of my gen ed kids that she's talking about.
Yep, and she was driving him to school around Christmas time
or
somewhere,
Christmas.
And he goes, Mom, if this gaming thing doesn't work out, maybe I'll be a special ed teacher.
And we both just melted.
We've got several students who now are doing research project on special needs population, and just being able to reach out and do something for someone that maybe looks or acts a little bit differently. That's a huge impact on the whole community as a whole. LIC is really big with the kindness matters, and we get to see it every single day.
Absolutely.
Another takeaway from my end, I've got a student who is in a communications class, which for non-sped people, very little communication skills. He's sight reading music perfectly. So he pops up and he'll play his instrument perfect pitch every time. It's really cool to see.
Has this carried over into high school? Yeah.
Yes. We started Giving Bach last year, and Allison at Marcus was there for it, and now they have a United Sound program that they started this year. And so there's a couple former Downing kiddos in there, which is really cool. And they played at the winter concert, and they'll play again at the spring concert. So that's been really neat. And some of the kids that are working that have come back to us to talk to us about what we're doing and how we're doing it, so they can expand it even more next year, which is really cool.
So what are the future plans? What things?
We're still figuring that out.
Okay.
Well, we've kind of talked about how to level the kids up a little bit, because there are kids that started at, Team Hamburger, which is the solfege team, that are starting to put fingers down and do things. We've got one boy that's actually taking lessons, and so he's been putting fingers down. He played Twinkle Twinkle at Solo and Ensemble last week, and he got a 1, and I have this cute picture of him holding up his little medal. He's so proud. So he'll probably at least start the year as a taco, which is with fingers, and he may be able to last. The goal is through Christmas, and right now he has the skills to do it through Christmas, so we're going to kind of see how far we can get him. And with that, we're very flexible on which, team they're on. We had a couple of kids that started as tacos, and it just got too overwhelming, so they've moved back to the solfege side. So we'll kind of push them as far as we're all comfortable, and then
it was kind of interesting how that kind of played into we started noticing some behavior problems from a student, and so we were trying to brainstorm, okay, why are we seeing some behavior problems? And we realized that it was getting too much and too stressful. And so when we said, hey, we want to talk about so we joined Bethany's group Monday, Wednesday, Friday, maybe on Tuesday, Thursday, you come and hang back in the class with me. And those days we're doing more music appreciation kind of things. We're working on, at the beginning of the year, we would take rhythm sticks and work on notes and note patterns.
We've got boom whackers and I found a bunch of YouTube videos, those like Looney Tunes classical videos that they used to have.
And they love them. The beat
Looney
is
Tunes
the heart
actually
to
retweeted
music.
one of our tweets with that, which we thought was super fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we were like, hey.
So just the flexibility of going from the other. So one of the things we discussed, it's not very feasible for my kids to join varsity or non-varsity, so we're going to stay with the beginner
Where it's a
classes
safe,
and just see,
safe environment.
enrich those skills a little bit further. And the neat thing about it is the parents, you would think, oh, well, they need to move on. They're perfectly happy. They participate in concerts. We were able to participate in the cluster concert with Marcus this last week, and that was a big deal to my parents to be able to participate with their peers.
The concerts are really cool because if we didn't tell you, you wouldn't know they were inclusion kids. There is solfege happening, but it's solfege that's appropriate for what we're playing, so you can't tell that. There's no funny sounds. They're blending in perfectly. And so at our very first concert, when we did this for real, I had several parents come up and they were like, I would have never known, which made us happy because that means that they got to be a normal kid. They got to be just like everybody else. There's nothing special happening.
You just may see a weird adult in the back.
Yeah, she stands
to help
with
manage
them.
behaviors in the back. But
She stands with them so
Yes.
that, if we need to do something, we can. But we haven't had any issues, like at all.
So doing this is it sounds totally customizable.
It is.
To your own program, which in one way can sound, really, really reassuring to some directors that, hey, I can just kind of work however I want. Maybe for someone like me who would like something a little bit more concrete, like do this, this, and this, that could be a little daunting. So is there a way to get this going and have a guide with you? If
you do the Giving Bach model or the United Sound model, they Giving Bach is more of a loose, you can customize, but United Sound actually comes with a curriculum, which is really helpful. I don't know much about that program, but I do know that there is a book that they follow, and there's a book 2, I think. So some of the kids that are in United Sound at Marcus this year will get to move on to book 2, and then the Downing kids who have been with us this whole year will get to start with book 2, most likely. Next year. So there is, something to follow. And United Sound is really cool because it's actually student-led. The teachers don't have to do much.
Nice.
Which is nice.
And I think at the high school, the way they adjusted that because especially with our district having 4x4 scheduling, it's done after school.
Yeah. So they meet every
versus
Tuesday.
a class period.
They meet Tuesdays after school for like 45 minutes.
And so have y'all started making connections with other organizations across the country doing this?
We have had, we haven't found many that are
We
doing
found
it.
a few, but I've talked to the people around here that do United Sound. I've talked to quite a few of them because, I mean, it's nice to just bounce ideas. And for me, you know, being brand new to this and kind of creating it myself, it's nice to see that what I'm doing is the right thing, or and sometimes we'll just bounce ideas off of each other to kind of figure out what we're doing. But we are seeing more and more inclusion things happening, which is really cool. And I mean, we're still very new to this. This only started for us a year ago.
I know.
Really,
That's it?
a year and a half.
That's it?
Yeah, a year and a
Oh,
half.
wow.
I mean, at this point, though, it feels like such a natural part of our program. Like,
Just with everything I've seen on your Facebook page, I assume y'all have been doing this for
year and a
4 or
half.
5 years.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Year and a half.
No. I will say this year we've had a lot of visitors, people coming and going, and the kids have done really well with that. At first they were like, you know, my kids, there's no filter there. Who are you?
Yeah.
What are you doing? And now they're just kind of used to it. People kind of come and go and check it out and look and see. So hopefully, you know, more people will be willing to try it. And I agree with you. I'm very much the organization, boom, boom, boom. I need a very clear picture. But the beauty of it is we can talk and say, well, that didn't work.
Yeah.
So we're not going to do that tomorrow.
There have been many
Yes.
times where that's
Or we'll look
happened.
and, you know, I'll
Look
do
at
the
each
whole,
other and
yeah,
like, well,
cutthroat. No, let's stop
Yeah.
right now. Let's try something else. So the flexibility is key. That what looks really good on that paper is not going to translate well into working with real students.
Or it might work on a Monday, but not on a Wednesday.
Oh, yeah.
Or on a full moon, or
Full moon.
holiday weekend, or if it's raining, or so many things can change your outcome that day.
They ran out of grilled cheese at lunch.
Oh,
That's
goodness.
a
Oh,
problem.
goodness.
You don't think about those little things till you do.
Isn't that every kid?
That really
It
is every
is.
kid.
It
And
is.
that's kind of been a big lesson for me
Uh-huh.
is
They're not that
they're
different.
not that different. They're really, really not. Because my kids act insane on full moons and when it rains, and if they run out of grilled cheese, they're stressed
Yeah.
out. So it's the same thing.
So can you tell us a little bit about what you brought here?
Yeah.
In terms of this orchestra binder and how you've modified this method book?
Yes. So all of the kids have stickers on each string. We have these little monkey stickers that I got at like Target or something, and each monkey is a different color. So do is green, so is yellow, and fa is blue, and it's all fixed do in the key of D, which is helpful. I mean, most beginner songs are key of D, so we just keep it fixed do, so we're not, you know, changing for the key of G or anything. We tried that once.
Ooh,
It was
that
real
was one of
bad.
those things that we go back
We
with.
tried that. I tried to get them just, instead of singing solfege, just sing, you know, D, A, and G. That didn't work. So we just stuck with fixed do. I take a marker and I draw a color underneath the note so they know to play do or they know to play so. And then I've gotten better at finale, and I learned how to do colored note heads and to kind of make the page look a little bit bigger. So now they're reading, you know, D where it actually belongs on the staff, but it's green. So they can connect where it is, but they're also able to see. It would actually be interesting to see some of your kids, if we took the color away, if they
How
could
they would
still
do.
see. And I bet a lot of them could understand the jumps.
And my intention was I wanted the kids to know do, so, fa, but I wanted them to know the note names. That did not translate as well.
We're going to stick with solfege.
So I had to kind of get over that a
Yeah.
little bit.
We're
But,
going to stick with solfege.
but maybe that's what we do at the end of the year. We look and we take the color coding away to see. That would be really interesting to see how much of that really.
And then they understand rhythms. We, you know, stuck with our food theme. And the kids actually helped me come up with what to say, because like I was trying to think of a one-syllable food item, and one kid goes cake, and I was like, all right, so quarter notes are now cake, and then half notes are donuts because there's a hole in it, so that's clearly a donut, and then a dotted half note is a donut hole because there's the little dot next to it. So, but it's also 3 syllables,
I was
so
gonna
donut
say,
is
yeah.
2, and then a whole note is big glass of milk, so that way they can, you know, get it all together.
That's great.
So we've just
like
stuck with food, and it works. And then like when we do our finger patterns, my kids are actually doing the finger pattern while her kids just sit on do or so or fa. But that's actually, interestingly enough, that class plays more in tune because there's a constant drone whenever we do finger patterns. They're droning to D, so they're hearing pitches. So I've started kind of adding that drone more in my other classes because I didn't realize it was going to be that helpful. But all of our rhythms are like, I love Dr. Pepper, and pepperoni pizza, it's Dr. Pepper time, things like that. So we're just all food related all the time.
That's how we roll.
Yep, we like food.
We love food.
So some of the examples that we have that we brought, the note heads and stems are one color, and then there's a color underneath them. So our tacos, who can handle fingers, all of our finger tapes are different colors, and that's something I learned from Charlotte Mollering my first year. She told me to make the tapes look like Guitar Hero. So I started ordering separate tapes, and I've always done that. So now I just took a marker, and if third finger is green, then I highlight, that note green, but then there's yellow underneath it. So they know to find green on yellow, and that's kind of their language.
It's nice about some of this stuff is like, the gen ed classroom.
Oh, I
would
use
be
this in
just
my
as,
gen ed.
like I was
Yeah.
about to say, like it would be
Absolutely.
just
I
as
use
useful.
these colored things in my gen ed classes. I have a couple kids in gen ed who are actually using some of the solfege stuff because that's just more accessible for them. So one of my goals as a teacher was to be better about accommodations because it paired with what we were doing. So this has actually ended up in a lot of the hands of my gen ed kids too.
Great.
And I actually knew quite a few people growing up who learned their finger patterns by color.
That's awesome.
I think the big thing too is, isn't the goal for all of us as educators is to individualize whatever we need to do, and if it makes it accessible for a kid differently, especially something as great as the fine arts, right? There's so many advantages of the fine arts that what Bethany's done is not only just strengthened it from a perspective of life skills students, but even her 504 kids, her kids are just struggle without a label. All of those kids are able to be more successful in her orchestras.
So is there any independent research y'all have done? Any resources you go to?
When I was doing this as an actual project for my master's class, I actually did a ton of research, and I printed off every article I could find and kept just so I could go back to it. And I've purchased a couple books, but a lot of the research has really just been kind of trial and error, and then talking to other people and seeing what their trial and error has been and figuring out what to do.
I think we should call that field research. It sounds much more
Field
impressive.
research.
We've done field research in the classroom.
But there are some wonderful articles and things out there that people can access. I just started honestly just Googling inclusion orchestra, trying to figure out what to do. And that was helpful too. And we found a lot of things that we didn't expect. And then the district employs a couple music therapists. So Music Mary comes on Tuesdays, Wednesdays?
Tuesdays every other week.
Tuesdays every other week. And she does music therapy with the kids, with Jen's kids. And I got to go sit in with her a couple times. But then I just got to talk to her. And so she was a great resource because even though we're not technically doing music therapy, we kind of are at the same time. So it's been an interesting way to kind of merge the two worlds.
And that's how we were invited to do the Music Therapists Association. Music Mary.
And she's fabulous.
Yep.
Is there any like number one most memorable moment you can think of in all
It's
of
a
it?
beautiful sound.
The first time we were experimenting with instruments, they're just, going at it, making crazy sounds. And we're always filming. We film all the time. And Jen is filming one of our boys. And
Can I give the backstory?
Yeah,
Okay,
yes,
so we
yes.
had just gotten this student, and his mom's so great. She always says,
Yeah,
"I'm not
he's
crying.
new.
You're not. I'm not crying. You're crying."
I forgot he was new.
He was new and on the spectrum, AU, and any sensory noise, anything was a problem. And the first months that we had him, he was a headbutter and would pinch, and I looked like I'd been beaten up the first couple of weeks we were there, just sensory overload. First time we took him in to Downing Gives Bach to meet the kids, I turn around because he headbutts me so badly in the back, like my whole body moves. We remove him, we ease in a little bit more. what, about 6 weeks later,
I think so,
maybe, we bring him in and we're like, okay, we're going to try this again. Now you take over. I had to give the backstory about how bad it was to get him in there.
This was the first time we were letting them hold the instruments by themselves and make noise by themselves. So it was much louder than normal. And he picked up a violin and just started making noise. And you were filming him to send to his mom, I think. And you said, you're making a beautiful sound. And he looks right in the camera and he goes, I'm making a beautiful sound. And we both just started
that was it.
Bawling. We did that. When we did Frozen at our winter concert, we discovered that Frozen was the favorite of one of her boys in there. And so they came back in like February or something, and we surprised him and played Let It Go for him. And we just told him we were going to play him something. We didn't tell him what it was. And she got it on film of him just listening at first and then realizing what the song was and just starting to smile. And then all my kids are smiling. It was really sweet.
Okay, one more. You shouldn't have started this conversation.
Oh, no, please.
We have a lot of these.
We have a student. She was new to the area last year, and in 25 years of teaching, I'd never had a student that had Fragile X syndrome, and that was a new one for me. But Mom, it's most clearly linked with autism, but different, and it's very rare, and you can only diagnose it through a series of blood tests. And so we approached Mom about doing this. She's like, nope, she's not going to stand up in front of anyone. The first couple of months we had her, if you even try to do an academic lesson, she would bury her hand in her face and just shut down completely. So we're getting ready at the end of the year. She had started loving coming to Downing Gives Bach and would even stand in front of the entire orchestra and conduct. So we were seeing this transition of her becoming more comfortable with her peers and no more hiding of her face. She's getting ready for the spring concert, and we're backstage. She's got her instrument. She looks at me and she said, I think I'm going to throw up. And I said, you don't have to do this. We can go sit. She said, I want to do it. She did it. She got off the stage, and I think it changed everything.
She's on the volleyball team
on
now.
The volleyball team at the high school.
In front of all these kids.
So, and she even said, if I would have stopped when I felt nervous, I wouldn't have gone that far. So
We're so proud
we've
of
got
her.
tons of stories.
So many.
So many.
It's really amazing
It
what the
is
two
fun.
of you are doing there.
It's fun. I feel like I don't do anything. I feel like I'm just along for the ride. That it's fun and it's exciting. And whenever we get together, I'm like, well, you do all the work, Bethany. She's like, no, you do all the work.
We both kind of feel like the other's doing the bulk of it. So,
which I think, again, it goes back to the relationship of the people, that are doing it, and we see the value of it far
It's
beyond
just so
the
obvious
extras.
the two of you work together very closely.
We do.
Like this whole interview, y'all been just like as soon as one person stops, the next person carries on. It's really great to watch.
She's a good egg.
So
She's a
you.
good egg. When we would go in before UIL last year, that was a time, and I'm like, Bethany, are you sure you want my kids in there before UIL? It was really cool because my kids at this point are comfortable. They're walking in between every chair. They're touching the bass. They love the big
love the
bass
bass. It's
sound.
their favorite.
They're touching all the instruments. Her kids did not miss a beat. And I looked at her when it was over. I'm like, well, you're ready for UIL, because if they can play error-free with us going in between, my kids are accidentally knocking their bows, touching
music,
everything, knocking music over, and her kids didn't miss a beat.
They were awesome.
So, do you have any advice for anyone out there thinking of doing the same thing?
Be flexible.
Oh, be flexible.
Be flexible. Be willing to fail. And be willing to
Pick yourself up and start again the next day, right?
But be flexible. I can't go in there with a rigid lesson plan because, like we keep saying, it could be raining. It could be all of these things could happen, and the thing I want to do doesn't work. So I have like a plan A, B, and C pretty much every day.
And you have to be willing to, if you want it to work, it may look a little different. So you may have an autistic student with a bow holding up, scratching his head in the middle of a song. And their feet may not be perfectly flat on the floor. You have to kind of be willing to let it look a little different than what you less pretty.
I didn't know before this, and I actually learned, I got together this summer with Jenny McHenry, who specializes in Suzuki, and she's wonderful. So I went to her to talk about, what do you do with younger students? Because I knew that mindset would work. So she showed me, some games and some things that she does with like her, second and third graders, because that's kind of where her kids are. So I figured that would be appropriate. But what I didn't know that she told me was that a lot of kids, like in Jennifer's class, don't have strong core muscles. And so sitting up tall is actually really difficult. So I had to get used to watching them, kind of slump over. And we've got one girl in particular that slumps over, and she's, barely, she's moving her bow, but very small, and it looks like she's not engaged. But if you walk behind her, she reads the music maybe once or twice, and then it's memorized completely, and she never misses it. It's so
and
cool.
It's better because you can walk by her and just kind of touch her shoulder, and she knows immediately to pop up. But this is also the same student that yesterday found her music for the first time. So she's engaged enough to want to do that.
We're kind of learning.
The other thing I think
success looks different. I think.
It does.
It looks different than it would.
It's as individualized as the instruction you give.
Exactly.
The other thing is, I guess, from the perspective is, I think you should have high expectations because the kids will rise to them.
They will.
Every kid learns. They just learn differently, and that includes music.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
And is there, I know the interview's basically done, but is there anywhere you want to give a shout out for social media for people to see this happening?
We have so much social
Dallas
media.
Streams.
Thank you to Dallas Streams.
Absolutely.
Yes, they have been so supportive. Our Instagram is at Downing Gives Bach. You can find us on Facebook if you just search Downing Gives Bach. Twitter is Downing Bach. So you can follow all of our things there. And we post quite a bit. And it's not just orchestra things. All of our orchestra kids were out, and they have a Seeds for Special Needs garden. So all of the kids were out there weeding the other day. So we post all kinds of just community interactions that we have together.
It's not just exclusive to ours, but we tag everything All Means All. And so you can do hashtag All Means All and find a lot of our stuff too.
We hope you enjoyed our discussion with Bethany Hardwick and Jennifer Rodgers. The featured educational work at the end of today's episode is Fantasia in F by Tracy Rush. You can find it at luxmusic.com. If you have any questions or suggestions for the show, shoot us an email at rightofstring@gmail.com.
Also, if you haven't already, please subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts and join us for our next episode.
See you next time. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.